So I thought this morning we'd have a look at Google Forms for quizzing. So I kind of touched on it in the past before, but just to give you a reminder of what it actually is. So if I go into my area geography class here, so Stephen in the briefing yesterday morning was talking about populating your classwork tab with resources essentially, and just as a reminder how to do that, you create material and then you attach it and it's there essentially. Also creating topics here so that you can organize your resources in there. But just to go one step further of how do you then actually quiz your students on this material, if you're not using a third-party app like Socrative, something like that. If you want to start moving away from that into Google, and there are multiple reasons why you might want to do that, or you might want to start doing that, because obviously that might be a massive job if you've already got a lot of quizzes already set up in other apps. And I'll just give you a run through of kind of what it can do. So just a reminder of how to set up a Google Form quiz. So if you go to create within classwork and then you click quiz assignment, and then you get if you're using this regularly, you get the familiar box that pops up which asks you for a title, some instructions. You can also, if you're a member or if you're a teacher of multiple classes, at the top there you can post this to multiple classes. So if you're a subject leader and you want to assign this to all the classes in your subject area, that's a nice way to do it.
Sorry, where did you click on then?
So that's just where it says for, and then that's the name of the class I'm in, and then there's a drop down which gives me all the classes. Also again, just alongside that where it says all students, I can go in there and click specific students that I want to send that to if I want to differentiate my tasks. So you give the quiz a title, give some instructions. You don't have to worry about the points value because that will happen within the quiz as you're formulating the quiz. Give it a due date as any assignment in Google Classroom, and that will notify students the night before it's got to be handed in, and also will go into their Google Calendar if they're using Google Calendar. It'll also go into your Google Calendar as a reminder. And if you assign it a topic here, it'll go straight into the topic back on the classwork page. However, if you don't, it's okay because Google just released the feature where you can drag and drop now, so you can just take an assignment or a bit of material and just drag and drop it under a different topic. So if I go back to quiz assignment, and you can see at the bottom here, it's essentially added a Google form as an attachment at the bottom there. So what I'm going to need to do is I'm going to need to click it, and it's going to open the Google form, and I get the blank quiz. Just as a reminder how to do this, so you've got your title here, you've got a description, then it sets you up with your first question. You've got a choice, do you want it to be a short answer, a paragraph, multiple choice, checkboxes, drop down, and so on. One feature that I noticed last night when I was playing around with this is that when you set a question as well, as you're typing the question, Google will try and guess what type of answer or type of question you want it to be as well. So if it's sounding like in the question there's going to be multiple choice, it'll just automatically change the question to multiple choice for you. It's not always accurate, so just be careful of that. So I set my question. How early is it? What is the capital of France? Suggested correct answer, yeah, I want that to be the correct answer. I'll add all of them. I can also add them in manually, but Google's just put that in for me. Once I've got my list of options, I go click answer key, and then I can select what I want the right answer to be. I can assign a points value to that. So up here in the right hand corner, I say that I want that to be out of 1. So if they get that right, they will get 1 point for that. I can also add some answer feedback. So if I want to give some direct feedback once they've answered that question, I can put a link in, put a video in if I want them to go away and kind of follow up on that. But I'm going to show you another technique of how to do that more effectively in a second. Any questions on that? Everyone familiar with that? So, and then essentially, down the right hand side, you've got your menus. If you click plus, it's going to add a new question. If you click text, you can just add a bit of text there. So if you want to put some content in there, some text content that you want them to read and maybe do a bit of comprehension on, you can do that. Very similar, but instead of text, if you want to do video, you can click Add Video, and you can search YouTube from within Google Forms, and then it'll give me some search results. I can also just copy and paste the YouTube URL into there, and it'll give me the direct video. You can also put another, I can put the YouTube URL in there. Also, I can put an image in. So if I've got like a graph or some kind of image that I want them to have a look at and answer some questions on, I can do it that way. One way to use this, because when using this, it's a very basic question after question after question, but there are some features in here that let you do a bit more in terms of good pedagogy, really. So if I go back to here, and I've just called this the progress relay, and essentially what this will allow us to do is to, within the quiz itself, if the way we design it, we can design it so that it can address misconceptions within the quiz. So that can be set up without you having to be live in there with the student or with a student. You can set up that to do automatically. You can stretch knowledge within there. I'm going to show you how to do that. You can that also gives way to individualized feedback. So if it's responding to a student's answer, also it'll give instant feedback within the quiz. And it also allows students to work at their own pace, and also it's going to cut down on teacher workload essentially. So I'm going to show you how to do that. So a normal quiz, you've got question 1, question 2, question 3, goes along, you get to the end, you submit it, you got your answers, you know what you did wrong, you know what you did right. You can set it up, and I'm going to show you how to do this in a second. I created an example last night. You can set it up so that based on whether they get the question right or get the question wrong, it directs them to a different section within the quiz. So say they get the question wrong, you could send them to a reteach section of the quiz that if a student got it right, they wouldn't have access to that. They wouldn't even know it was in the quiz because they would be directed somewhere else. So you can create a reteach section, and then, just like I mentioned with, you know how you had that menu section down the right-hand side of the Google quiz, you could reteach in a number of ways. You could put a video in, an image, some text, and some further questions to test that reteach. Also, in very, very similar, you can also stretch a correct answer. So if a student get the answer right, you could then add a further question to stretch that student in a very much a similar way. So maybe a YouTube video that goes a bit further on that topic, an image, text, and then some further questions. The one that I've set up as an example, which I'll show you in a sec, goes from, so if they get question wrong, it'll go to a reteach. It'll then ask them a question on the content that they've just looked at as a reteach. Then once they get that right, it'll go to the stretch. So when it's differentiation, but they're all getting to the same point, they're all getting to the stretch question essentially. So after they get that reteach right, they will then go to the stretch as well. And then from the stretch, it'll go to question 2. So you can see how instead of just going from question 1, 2, 3, I got question wrong, I got question 2 right, I need to go away and look at that. You can automate the form, the quiz, to address those misconceptions while the student is answering them, and to stretch the student while they're answering. Essentially making it quite a valuable resource for revision, I think, in terms of if you make a quiz that has this relay built in within it, you can just let the student get on with that, and you don't have to almost be a part of it. You set it up once, you can have it in your bank, and you can give it to students when you want to. You can give it to the whole class, and you don't have to be going in there and marking individual questions or giving individualized feedback, because this essentially, through the different routes that you create, does that for you. So just as an example, so this is set up, so I've just done it with one question. So we'll do it, let's do it together before I show you like the behind the scenes of it. So this is question 1. It's a geography question. What type of plate boundary occurs when plates move apart? Anyone want to have a go?
Is it number 1?
Top one, destructive. So let's click destructive, click next. Right, so you've been taken to the reteach because it was incorrect. So I've set it up as, so question 1, reteach, that was incorrect. Watch the video and read the web page, then answer the question below. So what I've done is I've included a YouTube video there. So I click it, we'll just start playing within.
We're going to discuss what a constructive plate boundary is.
And also a link to a website that discusses plate tectonics and what different types of plate boundaries are. So it is essentially, it's a constructive plate boundary. So I've reworded the question from kind of taking it from the other side. So a constructive plate boundary is when, and then hopefully after the student has read that, watched the video, they'll then be able to answer the question. So we now know it's what? When two plates move apart from each other. So when two plates move apart from each other, it is a constructive plate boundary. So if I click next there, so I've gone to the reteach. If I click next, it's then going to take me to the stretch. So it's going to stretch my knowledge on that. And what I've done in the stretch bit, if I've just used different types of media from the reteach, just to show you what I can put in there. So correct, well done, read the text and answer the questions to stretch your knowledge of constructive plate boundaries. So I put a bit of text in there, which I just copied and pasted from a website, which gives a bit more information on what a constructive plate boundary is. And then I've got a question there. So what is the name of the new land formed when magma rises to fill the gap between the plates? Anyone know what it is? Shield volcano. And then I've put an image there of the tectonic plates on a map of the world. And then the question, using the map above, check the plate boundaries below that are constructive. So judging by the arrows, which of the plate boundaries are constructive? Can you see that? Anyone want to name any? South American and African. So click that one.
North American and Eurasian.
North American, Eurasian, yeah, there's two there, they're the two. And then, because there's only one question, it goes straight to submit, but then you would add your second question in there. So you can see there that you've got the three different sections of that one question. You've got your question, you've got your reteach, and you've got the stretch question. Just to show you, if it went straight to if you got it right straight away, so question 1, if I clicked constructive straight away, next, it'll go straight to the stretch, so it wouldn't be going to the reteach, that'd be going straight to the stretch. So the student who gets that right doesn't even know there is a reteach section within there, really. It's not on their radar. So what does that look like from behind the scenes? So essentially it's all done through this last menu option here, add a section. So if I was just to put question after question after question, they would all appear on the same page when a student opens the quiz. However, if I click add a section, what it does is it creates essentially different pages of the quiz. So this is section 1, and I've put my original question in there. Then I've created a new section, section 2, which is my reteach. And then I've created section 3, which is the stretch page. Then, when I'm creating a question, it's all in these 3 dots down at the bottom right hand corner. So if I click those 3 dots, I can click, so it won't be like this when you go on, I've already clicked this, but I can click go to section based on answer. So once I click that, I get these 3 options down the right hand side of each of my answers, and I can say which section to go to based on the answer. So I know that constructive is correct, so I've selected section 3, the stretch section, so that if they get that right, it goes straight to the stretch. And then the other 2 are incorrect, so they're going to go to the reteach section. Any questions on that?
That's good.
Does it take a long time to set up?
Probably the first couple of times you do it, as you're getting used to it, it'll take a bit of time. But essentially, you're writing your question in as normal, and then once you've done your question, set up your sections first. So you're essentially looking for 3 sections per question. So 3 sections per question, your question, your reteach, and your stretch. And then if you name the sections as well, what will happen is it'll make your life a lot easier when you're deciding which section to go to based on the answer, because it has it in brackets there. So say you've got a 3-question quiz, that's going to be 9 different sections you've got going on. So if you are naming them, you're going to know, well, section 2 is my question 1 reteach, so it's just easier for pointing in the right direction. But essentially, yeah, so once you've created it, selected what you want the right answer to be, you just go to the 3 dots, click, go to section based on answer. That's an incorrect answer, so it's going to go to reteach. That's a correct answer, so it's going to go to stretch, and that's going to go to reteach as well.
So it knows where to go next.
Yeah, because you've told it
Yeah.
here based on the answer. And then you can create your resources. So that top bit there is just, I've inserted some text essentially. So that's it. Down here I've inserted a video. And then these are drag as well. So you can say you want the video to be above, you just drag it, drop it above the text. Now the text is underneath. And then the question below is I've just added a question essentially. So that's the progress really essentially. It's quite simple, but it allows for automated feedback, challenge and reteach within the quiz that I think would really come into its own within a revision activity, and especially if you wanting to push students further in their knowledge and not just test what they already know. So there's the option there not just to quiz students, but to also teach students within the form, which I think is something quite different to what a lot of other apps offer. And essentially it's not